Hi, thanks everyone for joining. So I think there's a few people just joining on Zoom now. We're also live on YouTube and Facebook for the second part of our Next Steps series. Today, I'm joined by Mike Dorr, who's a senior consultant in skill development, by Venkatesh, senior head of digital skills and innovation at NSDC in India, Christian Vetter from HR Forecast, and Madalena Riley from Practeria. So first of all, I'm just going to kick off by asking each of our panelists to do a short introduction to themselves, and then we'll be going through various questions and hopefully having an informative discussion today. Please feel free to post any questions. If we get time towards the end, then we'll take some of those questions and try to answer them. Alternatively, we will cover them post-event. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Mike Dorr. Mike, if you could give a short introduction to yourself.
Of course. Hello, everybody. And as Mike says, I'm a consultant in skills development, 25 years in the field, mostly with a company called City and Guilds, which is a global skills development company and an awarding body. Today, working in a small consultancy, International Skills Mark, working with regulators in countries like Bahrain and Morocco. Also looking at improvements to labour market functioning, typically on the supply side, UK Aid, World Bank, and similar types of organisations. And then lastly, working with purely commercial companies delivering skills development and training services around the world, where we help them bring their training up to an international standard so that they can meet the needs of the workforce today. Working with great partners, including TÜV Rheinland, which is a quality company, which also does personal certification, and of course Certif-ID, with whom we do great work on understanding labour market scans, and helping labour markets function better. So that's me.
Thanks very much, Mike. Madalena? I think you're on mute. Wonderful world of thanks.
Good morning. I am CEO of Practeria. Practeria is a technical skills training company. We design and deliver blended learning solutions. We specialize in advanced manufacturing, 3D printing for manufacturing, Industry 4.0, and digital transformation for manufacturing. So very much the focus is on engineering and how to upskill engineering and manufacturing sector to the future with Industry 4. We work with clients across the globe, very often quite a lot of them in Middle East, some in India and South Asia, some in Europe. Our clients are mainly universities, vocational colleges, and manufacturers, of course. We're big fans of the Certif-ID software. We think it's going to revolutionize skills development. And yeah, I'm really thrilled to be part of this panel today.
Great, thanks very much, Madeleine. I'm sure we'll be coming back to you on Industry 4.0 questions. Venkatesh?
Thanks, everyone, and pleasure being here in the forum today. So I'm Venkatesh Sarvasiddhi. I work with the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, part of National Skill Development Corporation, and I lead 4 functions: skilling, digital skilling, technology. The third is around startups and interventions and partnerships, and the fourth piece is the CSR all up. So it's been a year and a half at National Skill Development Corporation. Before that, I've spent 20 years in technology. In US, in London, and back in India. So predominantly most of my experience goes to Microsoft, where I've spent more than a decade leading the Microsoft Innovation Center, Microsoft Education Initiatives, engaging the youth, especially in K-12 in the STEM space, and interventions of driving technology and curriculum adoptions for better delivery of education in Southeast Asian region.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Venkatesh. Certainly be coming to you because we have a couple of questions around STEM today. So I think you certainly had a tremendous amount of value there. And finally, last but not least, we have Christian from HR Forecast.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm the CEO and founder of HR Forecast up here. And well, we are one of Europe's leading people analytics providers. We typically work with large companies, global companies such as Continental, SAP, BASF, Lufthansa, etc. And we're really specialized in technologies, HR technologies around big data and artificial intelligence. And also what makes us special is that we love skills and we focus on skills. And as our name, HR Forecast, already says, it's our job to predict which are the skill requirements of tomorrow. And I wanted to add that over the last 2-3 years, even through COVID, the skill management domain topic has been developed from something nice to have to something everybody must have. Yeah. So my point of view is that it's a very essential aspect to tackle it, and it's relevant for all industries, for all large and small companies, and it's always kind of the same question: which are the jobs and the skills my company, my organization, my country will need in the future? And yes, we have also had a collaboration with Certif-ID now for quite some time, and have been exploring different projects across the world, and it's a lot of fun to tackle the skill challenges together.
Thanks very much, Christian. And I guess a nice segue really into the first question that we've got, and we tried to pull out some different statistics related to the topic of how we meet those skill challenges or skill demands of tomorrow today. And the first one's really from McKinsey, and they estimate that around 375 million workers, which is roughly around 14% of the global workforce, would have to acquire new skills by 2030 in order to remain relevant in the marketplace. I really wanted to start with Venkatesh, and whether that's specific from an India perspective or in terms of your experience globally. But what, according to you, would you say is the most in-demand skills that are required for the future of work?
I think I would break this into two pieces. One is the blue-collar workforce, and second is the white-collar workforce. Because at both the levels, there are different interventions which we are working at NSDC. So at a blue-collar workforce, we are looking at driving, whether irrespective of which particular sector they belong to, whether manufacturing, retail, or banking. We believe, skills around EEE, what we modeled in India in partnership with the Vadhwani Foundation, which is again a philanthropic institution, and they do a lot of work in the skilling ecosystem, especially in India, Southeast Asia, as well as Africa and the US regions. So what we modeled is an EEE module. EEE stands for English, Employability, and Entrepreneurship. So I'm specifically talking about from an Indian context, because English employability as well as the entrepreneurship models have modules across any domain. You are a blue collar workforce is really proving out to be very successful. We've also made this as part of the Prime Minister's Skilling Initiative program, which is in fact the world's largest skilling initiative program we run. It is called Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, which is the Prime Minister's skilling scheme for the nation. So we've also made this as part of it. So these modules, under the EEE modules, talk about skills around teamwork, collaboration, work around communication. These are some of the main aspects which are touched upon. Because in a country like India, where 65% of the population is below the 35 years of age group, which is a demographic advantage we have till 2035. So that also puts us in a challenging situation, because we have more than 400 million people to be skilled. And this EEE module in the last couple of years, when we have done our impact analysis and certain interventions to understand the outcome, has really proved well to help these people in blue collar workforce get better jobs, better wages. And when this is on the blue collar workforce, from a white collar workforce, I would say, in the emerging world, there are industry 4.0 skills which are very, very important. Whether you talk about an AI, ML, blockchain, RPA, a lot of these technology interventions are going to impact positively and influence a lot of sectors, whether it is banking or whether it's an automobile or whether it is a manufacturing domain. So all these Industry 4.0 skills are extremely required, and irrespective of which particular sector you are in, it's important that you get either the functional knowledge of understanding a blockchain, understanding what's happening in an RPA, robotic process automation, or an AI and ML, or if you're technical and you belong to a STEM space, of course, you need to deepen your knowledge on these particular skills, which prove to be extremely important as we go forward in the next 5 to 10 years.
Excellent. Yeah, I think all valid points there, and I think really just going to you, Madalena, when Venkatesh is talking about the Industry 4.0, are there any specific areas of Industry 4.0 that you see are most in demand, or from a training perspective, do you get more requests for certain courses in terms of those skill sets?
Well, good question, especially now in the midst of pandemic. The Industry 4 change is actually even accelerated even more because it's all about automation, digitalization. So that shift has been happening as the result of Industry 4 trend. I'm talking, of course, about engineering and manufacturing. But now, because of the pandemic, it has accelerated even more. So I've been for the last few weeks, we've been talking to decision makers all the way down to the factory shop floor workers on Industry 4, and actually building awareness of what's Industry 4, how this is going to impact them as the business. So of course there are big hopes for improvement, for making manufacturing interesting and exciting again, but also there are a big impact on skills development and the future of employment with Industry 4.0 model. So yes, definitely one of the areas that it's accelerated in terms of the demand for skills related to Industry 4.0.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that. I'm really keen to get your views as well, Christian, from a technology perspective. I know, as you touched on, we've done various projects together, in India and in Bangladesh. When we talk about those most in-demand skills, and again, if you've got insights around Industry 4.0, how have you seen that displayed in terms of some of the data sets? I know you kind of cover from a global perspective, but have you seen those changes, in some of the analysis that you've got?
Yeah, it might sound funny, even though we're all about tech and we love data. The most important skills, according to the data that we parse globally, the 3 top important ones are: number 1, leadership; number 2, innovative thinking; and then only in 3rd place, there's a hard skill, data analytics and everything around data analytics. And our belief is that the most important skills in the future will be these fusion skills, so the skills at the interface between humans and machines. I believe the most successful companies in the future will be the ones that minimize this friction between humans and machines. And these 3 skills I just mentioned are, I think, very much supporting this case.
Yeah, excellent. And I guess, Mike, I know you work across many different countries. I mean, would you agree with Christian in terms of the priority of those skills required, and are they the ones that are most in demand for the future of work, or do you have a slightly difference of opinion?
No, I don't have a difference of opinion. In fact, my experiences map pretty much everything that people have said, and that point from Christian about the interface between people and automation and machines is extremely important. And creativity, as well as innovation, or creativity as a part of innovation, is something which is seen as not being susceptible to automation yet. So I suppose only a couple of things to add to the general picture is I'm struck with quite a lot of training needs analyses which I've seen recently, they seem to speak about digital marketing a lot, which makes sense to me now, because companies are having to understand where they fit in global value chains. They're having to market themselves in different ways. And so it's one of the aspects of digital skills which is cropping up frequently, and it would be interesting to see if colleagues have seen the same. And then the only other thing to add is, in a very fluid labour market, and which I think is changing from physical mobility to digital mobility, one of the most important skills people can have is how they find work and how they present themselves in that very new labour market. And that's a skill set which is being explicitly taught, and I think to good effect. But I think those are two minor additions to a picture which I think is very well, very well articulated by people who spoke before.
Yeah, I mean, one of the areas, obviously, that we're not going to dominate the conversation, but obviously the pandemic that we've all experienced and are still experiencing, it's created a number of different challenges for businesses, and one of them is obviously driving up demand for digital skills. How would you say, organizations begin to fill those critical skill gaps at a time when budgets remain tight?
Is that
Mike?
to me?
Yeah,
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm seeing companies respond to this need in a number of ways. One of them, before we even get to training, is being an awful lot more sophisticated about where they might find these skills in a longer supply chain. So I think we've got a couple of decades at least of management consultants and the general trend in strategy pushing companies in many ways to be smaller, more focused on their core, and to work with other companies in order to generate value. And I think that's been accelerated during what I've seen over the last couple of years. So in that environment, how do you fill the gaps? I think that's an awful lot about not just about how you skill your own workforce, but how you work with your supply chain. And there's quite a lot of behavior there about working and even training your supply chain on the things that you would like to see in the future. But as to upskilling within the company, I don't know if anybody else saw, there was an article on Amazon. I think it spent $700 million on retraining its workforce, and they've got this interesting situation where although they've got automation which might be removing an awful lot of jobs, in fact they have a skill shortage, and the skill shortage tends to be at the higher level. And so, even where resources might be tight, this is about strategy. Resources must be found in order to train people, but you can be efficient. I think there are good examples of the use of blended learning of the variety which I think Practica looks at, and there are ways in which digital learning can help. But I think there is still a problem with firms being inefficient with the way in which they train. My own personal experiences in that can sometimes be down to simply designating training as the HR problem. As soon as it becomes the problem for the HR department, it becomes an exercise in cost reduction rather than value creation, and that might be horribly unfair to a lot of HR colleagues, but that is often the case. So I think much more deeply integrated training using blended means, which is, when I say integrated, I mean integrated into performance management, where you can actually see a return on that investment. But I think probably lastly, it's just coming back to your point, where resources are tight, I think resource can always be found to address the thing which is the strategic priority of the company and being focused and clear about what that is. And I think pretty much every company and nation that I know, skills is in the top 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think really, just going to you, Christian, as a kind of HR technology provider, when you look at the last 12 months or, kind of post COVID, what impact have you seen in terms of demand for what you're offering as a platform, so that they can use technology to in effect, utilize their budgets and kind of get the best from the workforce they have available, both now and in the future?
Yeah, I think it has gained a huge boost. As I mentioned, despite COVID, it has turned from a topic that's nice to have to something mandatory, because now people are even more distributed, knowledge is even more separated and more siloed, because nobody really sits together anymore. So I believe these platforms are not the only one, but one very important aspect to kind of tackle the situation. And I mean, it's kind of strange. Knowledge nowadays is available. If you just go to Google, type in a question, you typically get the answer, but companies still don't know what they know. There's actually a saying in Germany about Siemens, our largest company: if Siemens knew what Siemens knows. And it's a bit of a pity also what Mike has mentioned regarding this HR challenge. How should HR be able to cope with this challenge if you ask them, what are the skills you need in the future? It's kind of difficult to get really precise answer. And then if you ask, what kind of skills do you have today in your organization? It's the same. You don't really get this answer. So how should anybody, for example, HR, close these gaps if you don't even know supply and demand? And even worse, you're developing towards this moving target, because demand will be shifting all the time. So I believe these talent platforms, I mean, there's a lot more to it, but they will be one very essential aspect, because they in the end enable companies to know on demand in real time what kind of skills you actually have around here. And then you can put in all these changing demands. I mean, we've all experienced it now through COVID, the demands shifted. There might be new job requirements, new project requirements, and it actually enables you find the knowledge sitting somewhere remotely in your organization. So I think this is a really, really great thing that's happening, and it's a lot of fun to be part of this.
Excellent. Yeah, good points. I think I just had one question going back to Venkatesh in terms of the triple E for blue collar. How about the focus on digital literacy? Is this a focus for the blue collar sector in India? And how do you see that when compared to other markets?
Absolutely, yes, Michael. So digital literacy has been one of the key priorities for the nation also, because in a country like India, which has close to 580 million smartphones, and it's very important on digital skills and digital learning, and also understand the basic skills, at least even if they are working in any environment, any system. So I'll tell you some of the interesting partnerships what we have built in the last 8 to 9 months. During the COVID times, in fact, the requirement of people to move in from physical classrooms and structures to digital classrooms, digital interventions has become tremendously high, and there was an acceleration in the pace. So suddenly in a country like India, everything which was under physical lockdowns has to be moved quickly to digital ecosystems. So what we have done is we have partnered with a variety of people. I would say there are 4 aspects or 4 pillars. One is the digital content. How do you get content? And also in a country like India, which is very diverse and different languages, making the content available in different local dialects and languages was one important thing. So I would say content is one of the key things which we worked on. We built very interesting partnerships with global firms in getting the best of the content, to the tune of even partnering with some of the worldwide MOOCs like Khan Academy, bringing in some very interesting content onto their ecosystem from a digital aspect. Second is also the tools which are used to move the physical classrooms into digital ecosystems. So we used a lot of partnerships with imparters and startups like Upgrad in India to bring in digital tools to deliver. And the third is digital training on digital skilling aspects. So there we felt we should partner with the large organizations which were also committing large numbers when it comes to digitally skilling. When Satya Nadella has announced in the month of August, September, that as part of their COVID-19 relief, they really wanted to skill close to 8 million people globally on digital skills. So India was the first country, and NSDC was the first organization to reach out to them and partner, and wherein we partnered in piloting close to 100,000 people, in digitally skilling them in the youth. And then we extended the partnership further to, because of the intake was really nice, to another 100,000 people, especially centric around women, to be digitally skilled. So similarly, we explored opportunities with Amazon on digital skilling. We rolled out during the COVID times. Then we explored digital skilling opportunities with American India Foundation. Again, Dell has helped a lot in structuring that particular thing because they were committed to this space. So I somehow believe, in my capacity sitting at an public-private, kind of an intervention, collaboration between the public, the government, or the federal, as well as the private organizations makes a lot of sense in scaling these, in launching and scaling these digital skilling programs. Now, in fact, we are exploring 2 more interesting digital skilling opportunities as we speak. One with WhatsApp, other is with Google. So to see how we can launch digitally viable skills. And also this has to be not just digital skilling, this has to be linked back to potential job opportunities.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I actually wanted to ask. And I think you touched on it briefly when you mentioned Dell, but, I think globally, when you look at, there's many successful skilling programs that are driven by government or kind of government associated bodies. What role do you see industry play in that? And I asked that kind of specifically in terms of ultimately, again, you look at the challenge in India in terms of the sheer volume of people and like you said, that opportunity that exists up to 2035. How do you get industry involved so that, you provide the audience with a digital skill set, they're digitally literate, some of the, key skills that Christian mentioned in terms of leadership and being a team player. But how do you get the industry involved so that you have a workforce that is, ready when they come out of that, training, and that they're fit for work? So I just wanted to know if you've got any examples where you've seen, an industry player, ideally in the blue collar sector, that's taken a real kind of active role and supported that.
So, if I add further, I'll give you 2 examples of how it has benefited industry and what motivates an industry to come forward and do some digital skilling initiatives. I think I look, since coming from the industry for 20 years, I've been there with the industry. All of these organizations are committed to work, but again, we need to also align and see what is in for them, or how can we help them attain some of their attributes or functions or metrics is concerned. For example, with Britannia is an Indian FMCG brand which sells one of the largest, seller of the biscuit packets. Marigold is one of their very well-known biscuit packet, and it's almost like 100-year-old, company. So I'm surprised to know that close to 6.4 million people consume Marigold or packets every day. And predominantly these people who buy these biscuit packets are household women. In a country like India, where household women, and there's a lot of emphasis on women entrepreneurship, we said, listen, they got a scale and we have some nice interventions. Why don't we partner together? Because their target audience were all women and household. So together we launched a competition which is about gathering some interesting thoughts and business ideas from these household women, which is their target audience. And we said the top 10 winners will get 10 lakhs each, which is a million INR, which is a decent amount for them to set up their own businesses. So when we launched this competition, we launched it in the month of March, and immediately towards the end of March, India went through lockdown periods, and this was open for 3 months. So what we said is, everyone who buys a biscuit packet, at the back of it, you have NSDC, a number, a code, you call in, and then you participate in the competition, and then you register onto our eSkill India portal, which was created. So it is not just about empowering those 10 women finalists or the winners, but also all the people who register get access to digital skilling content, especially focused around women and women entrepreneurship, helping them with various schemes, programs, digitally skilling them on a module. We created almost a 40-hour module with the help of Wadhwani Foundation. So you would be surprised to know by June, when we ended the competition, which was literally in the middle of the lockdowns, we received 1.76 million entries. That's the kind of a potential the country has. So I think what is the win-win situation? For Britannia, the target audience are the household women. they are reaching out to their potential target audience, who are the people who buy these biscuits. And for us, we are reaching out to the women, and we want to empower them. And we want to make them make sure that they are digitally skilled. From a government perspective, I think if we explore the opportunities, between the companies, who have to a kind of an aim or a specific target audience, what they are already working or they want to penetrate into, and strike partnerships with meaningful interventions which can impact both them and us. Those are the very successful partnerships. For example, when Microsoft has partnered with us, we said, for the bottom of the pyramid, let's not focus on Azure and cloud and stuff like that, but let's focus on MS Office, Word, PowerPoint, and Excel, because they are extremely important. And any individual who learns Word, PowerPoint, Excel at the bottom of the pyramid, can easily work in any of the startups or any of the organizations as a data operator, or maybe as a person, an Excel expert, or maybe making some presentations, can make some decent living at the end of the day, wherever he's sitting. He need not move into large organizations. He can operate wherever he is. And for Microsoft, of course, MS Office is one of the key drivers for their business, apart from Azure, and it is in fact one of the biggest drivers. So it's a win-win situation for Microsoft and for us. So what we are doing is we are aiming at skilling people, understanding the interventions or the organization's core areas of focus within the organization, so that the program what you design is scalable, and also you create a win-win situation for both the organizations.
Excellent, thanks very much. I certainly wasn't expecting a response linked to biscuits and how you actually get access to some of the harder reach audiences, but fantastic, and certainly an outside of the box initiative. One of the, and kind of just moving, I guess, to the other end of the spectrum, and I think obviously those core skills that you mentioned around, Microsoft Office and kind of, getting those basic digital skills is obviously important. When we look at the future demands of industry and some of the topics that we've kind of already touched on in terms of Industry 4.0 and that interplay between the cyber physical world, and I think Christian was saying the countries that will be most successful is where there's the least amount of friction that exists between it. One of the topics that I wanted to cover really that is around the STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I know from a parenting perspective, you look at what you kind of want your child's core skill set to be. Christian was mentioning creativity, and that's obviously important. But then when we look at the STEM, and I think research that we found is approximately 90% of STEM-related businesses in the UK struggled to fill those vacancies last year. So that, highlighting a kind of staggering shortfall in a UK example of over 170,000 skilled workers that weren't there. And kind of going to you, Mike, I'd just be interested, what role does STEM education play in today's and tomorrow's workforce? And I guess the second kind of question to that is, how can we encourage young people to pursue a STEM-related career?
So I mean, if we take as the basic that some of the STEM-related skills, mathematics, at its heart, is what's needed as part of the digital skills that we're talking about in the conversation already. I think the problem of attracting people to it starts to look very stark. And then if you add to that as well, that at least in many of the countries that I work in, there's a particular problem of attracting women into the STEM subjects. So I suppose I've seen broadly three sorts of strategies work quite well. One of them is improving the perception of the jobs which are at the other end of that kind of training. So there seems to be, I work quite a lot with schools, for instance, in the UK, and the quality of information about what career pathways are available to you has traditionally been really quite poor. And people have assumed that a lot of the STEM subjects, and if you mention the word engineering, ends up with you working in a dirty environment and one which perhaps doesn't have the kind of long-term opportunities that you would hope for yourself or for your children. We all know that, in fact, the reverse of that is the case. But how do you make that visible when people are getting their careers advice? So kind of strategy number one is improved career and learning advice, and an improved understanding of career and learning pathways. And it's one of the benefits of these digital talent platforms of the variety that we've touched on a few times in the conversation, that they improve that quality of information and can help you adapt your understanding of it relatively rapidly, because these career pathways are not static. So I think, for instance, Certif-ID's contribution to that has already started, but its impact is only going to increase. I think strategy number two associated with it is role models. Definitely when working with schools, we found that finding meaningful role models for people does have a significant impact. And quite a lot of work goes in to finding alumni of the school. So they don't just have to be a picture of maybe a woman working in a STEM kind of environment, but it helps even more if that person is somebody from the school that you are at. So the role models need to be quite specific, and there's a fair amount of work that needs to go into that, but it is meaningful. An important corollary to that is that there's quite a lot of research now coming forward that says that if you get those two things right, a clearer view of learning career pathway and the right kind of role models, not only do you start to increase the number of people going that direction, but you increase their performance at school. So the grade point average of people goes up if they've got a clearer idea where they're going. And so these are very important pathways. And then lastly, of course, is, or the last big one, is quality of teaching. So trying to make sure that you have teachers who are able, in a consistent way, to impart the knowledge is extremely important. There's often a perception which goes hand in hand with the feeling that jobs aren't particularly attractive, is that STEM subjects are hard, and therefore people sometimes go different directions. It's not necessarily true, although probably what is true is that when you look at something like mathematics, is the knowledge grows. It grows in layers. And if you miss one of those layers, if you have a poor teaching experience in 1 year, you struggle to keep up in a way that might not be true in other subjects. And so quality of teaching needs to be improved. That's not just about teacher training, but that's about the quality of learning materials. And last point on here is, I think industry has a lot to offer. We got a lovely example, got a huge investment into nuclear power, where I am. And these nuclear power stations are able to predict to a fairly fine level of detail the kind of jobs they're going to need over the next 20, 25 years. Very unusual in our current environment. And so the people who are looking at that have already designed apprenticeships, which are attracting huge amounts of attention. But they're also starting to look at how you put learning materials, which show a good working environment, right back down into the early stages of school. So you've got large industrialists producing learning material for schools and colleges in the local area. And although it's at the early stages, the signs are good. So that's three thoughts on how you get people into STEM, which are proving to have an impact.
Yeah, no, and valid point. I think the motivation piece. I think it's if you can show people, as you mentioned, a future career and what that can look like, it certainly provides that inspiration and drive to help achieve better results. Just going to you, Madalena, and I think we talk about those STEM skills that are required, and Mike was also touching in terms of the quality of learning. So a couple of questions that I'm interested to know in terms of the work Practeria do and your experience in terms of training. How have you, so I guess two questions. One, in terms of, do you find that there's more women coming into, that kind of engineering space or with those STEM skills? And then the second one is in terms of, I know you kind of design specific training courses around Industry 4.0. Maybe you could give a little bit of detail on, how you ensure that that's engaging. And my kind of link back to STEM is, for the courses that you're offering, does someone need to have those, strong core skills, or is that something they can learn as part and parcel of the courses that you're offering?
So just to touch on what Mike mentioned about how that it is, the perception is it's difficult to learn science. And from my perspective, from my experience or experience of kind of our generation, is it was difficult because there was always lack of context. And that lack of context was kind of you could learn lots of theory, but then if you didn't understand how to apply it and where to apply it, then that's where we lose the focus. And so that involvement of the industry, of the manufacturers and companies in creating the content and in showing students, learners that career trajectory that they can take, it's so crucial. And that's where actually builds motivation, builds this kind of a dream idea of the job from the kind of younger age. And that's exactly what we do with our training, even though we train adult learners. It's so important to bring them the context and bring them this motivation. So it's almost, when you design training, is designing also this marketing element of the training. So it is attractive for them. So you can keep them engaged throughout the learning experience. So that's one part. Another part with skills, technical skills training. In terms of technology, till kind of 10 years ago, it was great to use e-learning for the knowledge application, for the knowledge aspect of the training. But then in terms of applying training skills and practicing skills, the learner had to always go into the job place, stand in the front of machine to be taught what to do, which is a very risky and expensive exercise, both for the employers and also for the colleges or universities. Now with new technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality, you can actually recreate this environment in virtual reality, which then gives learners opportunity to practice the skills over and over again, making mistakes, even recreating those dramatic failures during the training, because then they can actually learn much quicker and much poignantly well, I will not touch this button next time because I know what's the consequence of it. So these new technologies give us really great springboard to getting skills, technical skills training much more accessible and also much more scalable than it was before, and cheaper. So colleges, universities start getting into that idea already. So we've got lots of conversations with universities across the world about setting up the VR studios, which is not really massive expense, but actually it will save them money in terms of the equipment in the labs, equipment at the workplace. Have I answered your question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, in terms of, the VR, I think, it's a great example where you can see, making or kind of connecting real world environments and putting people in those so they can, turn that kind of theory into practice. So I think that's a great. Sure.
With also augmented reality is another great tool or great software that can make the training smarter, because augmented reality is basically overlaying information into your current vision. So you can, standing in front of the machine, wearing your HoloLens glasses or having the application that can overlay information, just-in-time information about this machine. So how the machine is performing, or what do you need to do to get rid of the error on the machine, or what do you need to do to make certain maintenance of the machine. So those are the tasks that very often that you don't use on a daily basis. It occurs kind of once per month, per 2 months. So if you incorporate it into your training, at the end of the training, you will not remember that in this 2 months time, 3 months time. So what's the point of actually teaching someone and wasting time during the training session if they actually can use that technology and perform the task with those instructions in front of them to exactly the same quality as it would be the experienced technician or experienced engineer. So that's another great technology that can actually make our training solutions much wiser or safer and smarter.
Excellent example. It's all I remember back to a child. It seemed like it was the distant future, and it all starts to become reality. I think, Chris, I'm kind of keen to get your thoughts from in terms of we look at that the role that STEM education plays in today's and tomorrow's workforce, and does that translate in terms of your findings of the demands of industry now? And do you see those upward trends when you're looking at that data from a global perspective? And then specifically, do you see demand being greater in certain countries or certain parts of the world than others?
Yes and yes. So it's all about STEM. That's totally true. The other part is there are regional differences, of course, yeah. And also I see a lot of variances in the capability of countries to adopt to these changing demands. So just one example from Germany. Germany is very much siloed in terms of career paths. So what you study, you later work for. So if you become an engineer, you stay an engineer. If you don't do that, you never become one. In other countries, we work for example, a lot in Ukraine on the labor market. That's where we hire. It's very flexible. You study art and then you become a programmer because that's what the market requires. So it's a very different mindset, a bit flexibility. And if you now look at Singapore, for example, I think it's a great example of a country that offers governmental programs, Skills Future in this case, to train people older than 40 years of age to reskill. And since I see the STEM jobs are dominating the labor markets, and there's for sure not enough demand globally, regional differences, of course. The only way I think we can cope with the situation is that learning and reskilling, upskilling never stops. I don't think it's strange if somebody 50 years old goes back to university to study something new because their skills are not important for the labor market anymore. So this is something I think also governments need to support, because unemployment is more expensive than a funded program, maybe in combination with the employer, that makes the people valuable again. So I believe this is something that the data shows, of course, on the labor market perspective, but then also since there's so much change in this data, I mean, it's so dynamic. The skills of today will not be the same skills of tomorrow, and we don't even know what's going to be asked for in 2 days from now, basically. So that's why we need to change our mindset that learning is something that you have to do all your life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's kind of one question. I think we maybe just got time to cover it in terms of the kind of demand as we touched on, and the kind of final quote I've got of today was from the Chartered Institute of Professional Development, and this is basically specific to the UK, was saying that 30% of workers in the UK are aged over 50. Obviously complete opposite end of the spectrum to what we have in India, and there's an insufficient number of young people entering the labour market to replace them. I guess there's 2 points there. One, you can actually train the over 50s, which I think is your point, Christian, and the other one is from a human resource management perspective, handling those demographic changes, would in the workforce, would that include the adoption of this different digital platforms? And if yes, how can companies engage with what you might call as the on-demand workforce? And I'm kind of keen to get your views, Chris, and also you, Mike, from a labour mobility perspective.
Sure. So it's very strange. The company in the world that knows the most about anyone here is Microsoft, because Microsoft owns LinkedIn, and there are millions, I don't know, maybe probably over 1 billion users nowadays on LinkedIn, and they give away all the information, what they have done, what they want to do, what kind of skills they have. So somehow Microsoft does something right that other companies don't do right, because when I talk to companies and ask them, what are your skills? They're like, maybe you can crawl LinkedIn and tell us. And I'm like, no, guys. I mean, we can do crawling, but that's not the way we should do it, because LinkedIn data belongs to the users. Anyway, so it's all about the experience of the employee. So Microsoft, like LinkedIn, found a way to engage people, to make it value adding, to be on the platform, to give away data in return for services. And I believe, especially for the more senior generation that are maybe they didn't grow up with these platforms and social media, it's even more relevant to make them aware that what a talent platform can do for them. Yeah, and it's all about value adds. Me, as an employee, whatever age I have, I tell my employer, or the data crawling tells my employer what my skills are, tells me what my skills are, and I immediately can use it to find new jobs, to find colleagues that support me, to work in more interesting projects, and also to maybe from an HR perspective to fill vacancies on demand. So this is the change of mindset that we need to think about, that making it an experience, not just for HR, being able to better know about their people or the business, but also for the individuals to be able to use such solutions to their value.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just, I'm conscious of time. We've got, I think, probably 3 minutes left. I just really wanted to get that question and from you, Mike, in terms of, how do you think companies engage with what you might call as the on-demand workforce?
Well, I think as Christian says, they're having to use platforms in order to be able to understand where skills are in a much more fragmented and fast-moving labour market. And the central part of your point around the aging population is accelerating all the things we've talked about in this conversation. Is accelerating automation as people feel that they don't have quite the influx of new people coming through. It's in accelerating globalization as people look overseas. So these platforms aren't just about dealing with a fragmented local market. They're dealing with a very international labor market, which I think is quite exciting. I think we've moved from a stage where maybe 10 years ago, we talked an awful lot about labor mobility, and what we meant was people moving between countries. But I think what we mean now is more about digital offshoring and skills being found around the place. So it's capital which is moving rather than people. Yes, I'd have to agree with Christian. Simply relying on LinkedIn is not really a strategy. And I think this is where the much more sophisticated platforms, ones which operate at a much more granular level, not just what the occupation is, but what are the specific skill sets and how current are they? That's where we're going, and that's where successful HR strategies are going.
Excellent. And I think my final question just linked to that. I think as you rightly pointed out, we've kind of moved from labour mobility to that digital side, and it's really to finish off with Venkatesh. It's a huge question, but have you seen kind of changes in terms of India and in terms of the demand for some of the workforce in India to, from an international perspective, but rather than, for example, moving to the US, they're staying in India and able to fulfill those roles?
So yeah, if I understand it rightly, it's about how are we looking at moving some of the talented workforce from India to other countries?
Correct. And have you kind of seen a slowdown in that process, and people, as we kind of touched on, being able to fulfill those roles from anywhere in the world, really?
I think there are two areas. Again, I would always split this into. One is the blue collar workforce and the white collar workforce. India has been predominantly been exporter of talent, especially in the white collar workforce. Because of our kind of the STEM education and the kind of availability of the talent in the services space. So most of our talent, which is in the STEM space, because computer science education is now part of almost in reach of every nook and town, from a city to a town to a rural villages. We have colleges. But again, the quality, the curriculum and the content, these are some of the challenges one has to address, because there are jobs in the tech world, but there are, for the ones who actually go deep into coding and programming and understand the product side of things. In the services space, because India has got the advantage of with companies like Infosys, Wipro, HCL, and Cognizance of the world, and we have delivered the services business well, whether it comes to upgrades or whether it comes to the maintenance, testings, and other aspects of the services functionality. We've been exporting a lot of talent from India to US, UK, and even other countries like Germany. So there's a lot of white collar workforce from IITs and best of the institutions who even take up some good product level roles or engagements which are deep tech engagements across the states. On the blue collar workforce, there are partnerships which we have with UAE. We have partnerships with Japan, especially in sector specific. For example, Japan is an aging population. Unlike India, in fact, it's reverse when compared with the population demographics and the average age group is concerned. So there's a lot of requirement right now which we are catering to in healthcare space, especially taking care of taking care of the elderly citizens there, their healthcare needs. There's a lot of talent, there's a lot of blue collar workforce which is required. But of course, there are challenges also, because one has to learn Japanese, and we are working with a lot of our training partners and centers to train the workforce in Japanese as a language. That's an opportunity. In fact, yesterday I was talking to one of the world's largest mobility company. They in fact want a lot of EV space, talented workforce in the blue collar workforce to be actually skilled in India and then further be deployed in Germany. So that's an advantage which we have because of the large scale and the population which is available, younger population which is available in the skilling ecosystem. We have that advantage, but each country is different. For example, with the UAE, the opportunity is very different. With Japan is in healthcare sector, let's say. Some parts of Germany and other countries in Europe, they are looking at electric vehicles, mobility space. It depends on opportunity to opportunity. US is predominantly technology.
Yeah. Listen, that's thanks very much for that, Venkatesh, and thanks everyone today. I think we're slightly over actually in terms of time, but I think to summarize, obviously, when we look at that original question in terms of how do we meet those skill demands of tomorrow today, it's really a combination of factors and also a global effort, right? From education, ensuring that there's engaging education, ensuring that there's a kind of key connect, between industry, between the training providers, and between governments to ensure that the right skills, the right competencies, and ultimately the jobs that people are trained in are there. And then I think the other key takeaway is how digital platforms can be used both from an HR perspective to provide learning pathways, but also from a training perspective. And as you touched on in terms of that acceleration of online learning and blended learning, hopefully will reach a significantly wider audience. Some of the people who maybe haven't had access to the best schools, the best colleges, or the best education, is a way for them to access the right content, the right training, and if we can provide them with the knowledge in terms of what those career pathways are, they can have the same opportunity to get access to the best jobs both today and tomorrow. So that's my summary. I think I'd just like to say thank you very much to all of the panelists today, to Chris from HR Forecast, Mike Dorr, Magdalena from Practeria, and Venkatesh from NSDC. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope everyone who's joined us on Zoom and on Facebook and on YouTube has found it an engaging conversation. I know there's different questions we weren't able to answer today, so we'll follow up with some answers on those after. So thank you very much. The last thing I'd like to say, we have at the same time next week, the final event is a role of lifelong learning and improving opportunities. So a nice kind of connection to what we finished off with today. So thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you, Michael, and thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye-bye.